Well, this is three-fourths of my children. My son Daniel flew this week on Friday? He was home from Romania for 2 weeks, and now he is back in Japan, playing basketball in Japan. And so these are the remaining of us, of my descendants, of the first layer of my descendants. We all know Chandler Bailey. Chandler is 32. My son Tyler just had a big one.
30, yeah.
He just turned 30 a couple months ago. And Kendra just turned 27 this month. Yes, I got grown children, y'all. Grown children. And so we want to talk about today about the impact of fatherhood, or at least me as a father, upon them. We can't talk about everybody. We can talk about them and their experience with me as a father. I've given them talking points as to all the good things they're supposed to say about me this morning. Okay. So they can be completely honest about that. Let's start off with a couple of scriptures here. Proverbs 17 and verse 16. It says, "Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers." That verse in New Living Translation, it tries to broaden it to include both genders. It says, "Grandchildren are the crown and glory of the aged. Parents are the pride of their children." And so let's start off here today. It says, because the glory of children are their fathers. Now, what that really saying is that children should be proud of their parents. They should be proud that they are their parents' children. Now, all of us haven't had that experience, okay? Many of you know so much about my story, which I share often. And I always think about that word often. I looked it up because some people say often and some people say often. And it originally was often, and it has evolved to often. I just want y'all to know, for those of you who think I mispronounced that. I studied this recently. Often is a word. It's acceptable now for people to say often. It started off often. Yeah. How many of y'all knew that? See, aren't you glad you came to church on Father's Day? Just learned something new called random facts. Okay? But the situation with my mother and father separated during my single-digit years, early years. I don't recall my father ever living in a home with us. And so the story that I understand is that my father became an IV drug user. My mother used to say, "He on that stuff." Y'all don't know nothing about that. He used to say, "He on that stuff." That's what they used to call it. He on that stuff. And y'all ever heard this stuff? Yeah. He said, "He on that stuff." He became an IV drug user, and then eventually got off of that, and then for the most part, spent most of his life as an alcoholic and died as an alcoholic on the streets of Jersey City. And so I had heard, if you ever really want to get Bishop Bailey, that's what I call OB, the original Bishop Bailey, talking, because my father was responsible for getting all his siblings up to the New York area. He left home at 14, heard the story about him. There was a cold day, and they was picking corn in the cornfield in West Virginia. And my father just dropped everything and said, "Deuces, I'm out. I'm not doing it." So he walked through the field. And my grandfather said, Herbert! And he walked and didn't look back. They didn't hear from him till 3 years later. He went, put his age up, went into the military, and went to North, and then invited got the rest of his siblings to come north. And he had one of the first, gyms. When people weren't working out, gyms in Jersey City. Got as a result of the lifestyle, he was in and out of jail. And so I didn't have really good memories of my father. And so I can't say I was proud of my father. And so I think to be able to have a father who you're proud of is a good thing. So let's start off saying with this question: what are you proud of regarding me as your father? Not everybody at one time here.
Okay. On a personal note, I'm proud of you just being a father, having so much integrity with us and the ministry. Just growing up, seeing you start the ministry off and being diligent and showing up every day has been a great example for us. And as a father, too, you're a great father for all of us. You tell us what we need to hear, not what we sometimes want to hear. And so I'm proud to have a dad who I can lean on when I need him. So that's what I'm proud of, most of you.
All right.
I would say, addition to what I said earlier, your vision, like how you strive for the vision that God's given you. That's a phenomenal model, because a lot of times in life you have hopes, you have dreams, you have ambitions, but long-term goals are sometimes hard to stay connected to. And I know one of the visions is the church, and you have had a vision for our family. So I really admire and I'm proud that my father is a man of vision in multiple areas, not just the church.
Okay.
I definitely agree with both of those statements. Like, very proud of your integrity and seeing how you're the same person everywhere you go. And some people strive for that. So definitely that and the vision. But also, I'm really proud now to have a good relationship with you. I'm proud to have a good relationship with my father, a friendly relationship with my father, that I can call you and talk, and I want to, and it's not a burden to like, oh, I have to call my dad, let me get this over with. You know, I want to call my dad. I look forward to coming home and spending time with you.
Did we ever have a strained relationship?
It could have got there. I think that there are times where it could have got there when we weren't seeing eye to eye, and I might have felt like some of your correction was rejection. And I felt like, as I was looking through the emails, one of the things in the letter that you wrote me, letter to my daughter, and it was about, the conversation started about how I was dressed on my birthday. So I invited my dad to my birthday dinner with my friends. We were in New York. So I was like, okay. And the funny thing is, I told my homegirls, y'all don't dress crazy, okay? My dad's gonna be there. But
Did you?
But as I was getting
I'm gonna
dressed,
dress enough crazy for all y'all.
as I was getting dressed, I was like, this don't look birthday enough. This don't look birthday enough. Then I was like, okay, now I look like it's my birthday. So as I'm walking towards my dad, I see him mouthing, she done lost her mind. And he was mad. Like, he had to walk. You walked away for a bit, I think.
Probably so.
But yeah, so.
This was bad, y'all.
It wasn't that bad. It was like a halter top and a pencil skirt.
I would show y'all a picture, but we in church.
So, we didn't see eye to eye on that. And you wrote me an email detailing why, about the value of modesty and basically what was wrong with that, and trying to get me to understand your heart. And part of my reply, I just saw this in between services, I was like, well, I'm sorry that I'm not being the daughter that you imagine I should be. Like, I'm sorry that I just feel like you're rejecting me because I'm not this cookie cutter princess girl. I'm never gonna be that, And your response was, Kendra, I want you to be who you are. I love you for who you are. So I think that by communicating through those times, there were moments throughout the years where our relationship could have been strained, but you reached out and you made a bridge and we communicated through it.
Yeah. One thing I would say about that is you're always willing to be a bad guy in your own house. I always say that too to my wife sometimes, that as a man, as a father, sometimes you have to say stuff that your child's not gonna like at the time.
Yeah.
And you never hesitate to do that. So a lot of times I say
What you call it, being the bad guy in your house?
I say every man needs to be able to be a bad guy in their own house. Yeah. And sometimes you say stuff, you make decisions, people aren't going to be happy with them in your own house, but it's for the best of your family, and you've always done that. Whether it's saying, hey, Tyler, pull your pants up, or whatever it is. I mean, I know you're saying it out of love, and yet you want us to grow and be better, and you're not scared to say those things.
If y'all can imagine, he's Mr. Conservative now. And I have bought him some clothes that I would wear, and he was like, I ain't wearing that. It's too out there for him. He's very conservative, even as an attorney now. I gave him a Louis Vuitton briefcase. I don't think he's probably used it at all, because he's like, probably I ain't taking this to court.
You can't walk in court with a Louis briefcase, all with the monograms all over them.
Yeah. But anyway, he's very conservative. And there was a time our biggest issue back in the day was him wanting to have his pants hanging off his behind. And he had a pretty big behind.
Unnecessary to add.
Really?
Okay? And he just wanted to have his pants hanging off. I'm like, boy, pull the pants up. Pull the pants up. There was, even when he played basketball in high school, he wanted to have his shorts down. The ref would stop games sometimes, tell him, pull them up. Right?
Just keep moving. Keep moving.
Yeah. But which, the interesting thing I want to say about this, even my daughter today, because we're still working through some things.
I think we've landed at a good
She
place.
says we've landed, we're still working it through. Our biggest issue is her attire, from my perspective. That is my biggest issue with her daughter. Not even the guy she's dated, none of that. It's always been her attire. And we're still working it through. She thinks it's over. We're still working it through.
I'm fine.
We maybe not miles to go before we sleep, but definitely a lot of yards, okay? And so, but what I want to say to parents and to fathers, some of the stuff, there's going to be things you don't like, going to be things that irritate you, that you may, because of your values, you still may want to insist upon and push. But as a couple things you have to realize as you're raising children. Number one, you're going to have to start categorizing and prioritizing some of these issues, because some of it's just not worth all the drama. Okay? You know, there are preferences and there are convictions. All your kids are not always going to live up to your preferences or fulfill all your preferences. Now, you have convictions, non-negotiables, that you're not willing to budge on, but there's some things, it's just your preference. Some things are generational, okay? I watch now, you know, I hear Chandler, Pastor Chandler now has this revelation about how music affects kids' lives. I'm like, really? He said, it's a spirit behind this music, and this spirit is making these kids. I'm like, really? Okay? But when I was telling him this stuff or trying to get this across to him, he wasn't hearing it. And both of them, they can tell you, I was the king.
He used to break CDs.
All the time.
And
Yeah.
I didn't know the story behind the CDs. I guess people used to make the CDs and they used to buy them. And I would just go check the cars. Once I heard it, when I heard and I heard F and S and whatever else, I would take it out and break it.
Imagine the
Many
tragedy.
times I would leave it right there in the car, just letting them know, you don't play this stuff in my
Right,
car.
right.
And it was my car. They were driving it, but it's my car.
And back in the day, we would share CDs with friends. So if someone had a new album, you would borrow their album if they had done listen to it, and I would go back to school with their album broken.
Oh, well. Yeah. So you got preferences and you have convictions. And then some of these things I really want to give some parents they're going to grow out of it. If you have been consistent with giving them a foundation, watch this, and giving them consistency with you. I'm not just talking about telling them one thing. You know, this whole thing, the way I was raised, okay, we said it earlier, and it immediately hit me about, and I understand you're in school, about mad mothers against drunk driving, that telling children to stay away from alcohol until they're 21. And so I was raised, you can't smoke till you're 18. And so y'all know that don't work, right? The whole thing of that, this is just wrong for this age, but when you get older, that because kids don't understand that. You are doing it, period. We were looking at a picture yesterday. I was looking through some old pictures, and my grandson was at the house. And he said, who's that? I said, that was my sister, Aunt Tracy. And he said, was she a tomboy? I said, no, because we're like single digits, she and I. And there's a picture of her, and she got this hat on and looked like she's trying to have a cigarette in her mouth. And my grandson said, why would she do that? And I said, you're just trying to be funny, but he doesn't understand that, but that was the way I was raised. You saw these examples, and your thing was, when I get older, I'm going to do that. But I think this whole thing of, if you don't have values that are non-negotiables for you, it's going to be hard to just say, wait till you're older.
Like you broke every CD. Once you heard one word, you broke it. I mean, you were breaking CDs off the beat sometimes too. You didn't even allow the lyrics to come. You just broke the CD. It could have been a good
You see, I
CD.
broke it off the beat.
You
hear
put
doom,
the
doom.
CD in, right? You hear the beat. You know, the rap
No.
beat, right? And you break it.
No,
You didn't even wait for the
it
lyrics.
wasn't a bit. He always goes to extremes. he always
It could have been an edited
exaggerates.
album. It could have been edited.
He always
the clean
goes,
version
no,
of it, right?
no. Once I heard the cussing, and once I heard that, and I heard the N word, it was broken. Because I wasn't going back and forth with these.
Consistency.
So looking back at that, I mean, being proud of your standards as well. I know I'm proud of your vision, but now looking back over my life, I'm proud of your standards. Because if you would have lowered certain things, I mean, it could have been damaging to our life potentially.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about when it came to setting standards and having a vision? That's something that we're all proud of now. Was that something that you and mom deliberately talked about? And like, you know, I know I've seen people on their wedding day maybe have wrote out a mission for their family or a vision for fatherhood. Because you didn't necessarily grow up with that. So how did you decide what type of father you would be?
Well, you didn't say it. I got saved at 12. And so when I got saved, I got in the church, and the church was my life, and the standards of what I saw, quote unquote, holiness, that became, we still see you. Are you trying to hide, really? Okay. You know, so that was my, and if anything, your mom helped balance me.
Yes.
I would have been more extreme with my standards because I was raised as a, you know, through Bishop Bailey and that influence of the church in Pentecostal holiness type of, I mean, there was,
That wouldn't work.
yeah, I don't know how, if I tried to enforce that with her,
I would have ran away.
I'm not, you know, so my whole thing was, y'all need to understand, there was a time initially when Kirk Franklin came out with his first stomp, I wasn't having none of that. Stomp, the devil is a liar. You know, and then having a secular artist on it, they wasn't even listening to that. You know, when we started having youth ministry, and Pastor Dwayne, you know, he was a preacher's boy, but he was a party preacher's boy, and all that. And so they was over there in youth, and they would be doing all this dancing, and I was about to shut all that down. I had to evolve. I had to evolve to recognize, you know, that everything is not a sin, and that some of this is just letting children be children. I remember having a discussion with your mom about you going to a middle school dance or something. I'm like, no, we ain't starting this. We ain't starting this going to these dances and parties. And so we discussed it, Pastor Marsha. We discussed it, right? We discussed it, and I think what we came to an agreement was, okay, I think it's better for us to allow them to do this while they're in the home, and then we can talk about what they saw, what they got exposed to, so they won't get to college and go crazy, which I saw a lot of people do. So we had to talk about my standards and what we're going to enforce and what I'm going to back up on, what I need to have a different paradigm and perspective on, and all those things. Yeah. Ephesians 6:4. It says, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. That verse is also in Colossians 3:21. It says, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. So it was always my endeavor to bring y'all up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord by bringing you to church, by giving you biblical examples. Early on, we sat down with you and we did family devotions and all those kind of things. That was bringing you up and nurture the admonition of the Lord. But the other part says, fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath, or don't provoke them to the point of being angry. Have I ever done anything that provoked you, or discouraged you, or angered you?
Are we going to open this door right now?
Yeah, we're going to open this door right now. We opened it first service. You weren't here.
I haven't been provoked to wrath, but you have said things that have upset me before. You know the situation I'm about to talk about, right? I was in law school, and
Law school.
I really, in undergrad, I did well in undergrad, but once I got to law school, I mean, I was really focused. I was studying, 6 hours a day on weekdays, weekends, probably up to 12 sometimes. And so I got a B- or something, maybe in the class. And I told my dad, I was like, yeah, I got a B- in this class. I really wanted an A. And his response was, well, you know, you're a C plus type of student.
No. I said
But
that.
he said something like
He
that.
heard
And
what
I
he
heard.
heard.
I heard what I heard, right? And so, of course, he's saying that to try to make me feel good, right, about myself, that B's not bad. But in that moment, you know, I was raised that words have power, right? And you know how Jesus had to rebuke Peter when he said whatever he said. So I had to rebuke him in that moment.
Get
like,
thee behind me,
look,
Satan.
Hey, yeah, get thee behind me, Satan. I'm an A student, and I was really upset about it. And he was like, he didn't see any harm in it, but I was upset at one moment.
How many of y'all was happy when you got B in school? Come on. All my B students who was happy you got a B. Come on, and your parents need to hang
foul.
that one up. You know, so I was a B student. For the most part, I was a B student, and my response to him was, you know, there's A students and B students, you know, and so, and yeah, he heard it. He heard it. I said he's a C
I
student.
feel you on that.
Okay,
Feel me?
but anyway, I'm not going to justify it. But obviously, it was to this day, and he was grown by then, finished undergraduate in law school, but even those words still affected him, which tells us that the influence that you can have on your children, that your words mean so much to them, positive or negative.
Yeah, I was going to say that the weight of the Father's words are so heavy. And looking back over my life, you know, like I mentioned, sports. And another area, though, I think was, you know, when I was really passionate about music. And because of the history of the style of music I was doing, hip-hop or rap had a negative, you know, culture associated with it. And so I had support, but I realized that I wanted to do it more passionately. I wanted to get more involved with it. And you supported me doing it, but at the end of the day, everyone has a preference. And as your preference was at the time was not that type of music. And I interpreted it as your preference wasn't me doing the music. And what I'm saying is I realized with fathering, like, you know, like you grow up, your child starts becoming who they are. I started becoming who I am. I'm listening to Tyler, and I realized these friction points are so healthy. It's like this idea of everything to be totally aligned and everybody to be completely on board. I don't think that's the objective of parenting. I believe these pure places of friction where conflict is revealed, it sort of like refabricates the relationship and makes it stronger. And so I'm looking over that area. It's like, you didn't mean no harm, but I felt resistance in there. I was like, man, he's not supporting me in my music ambition, my music dreams, and you probably didn't even look at it that way. But I felt that way.
So first service, what was revealed is that he felt I didn't support him in his, what was it? Oh, he thought I was too focused on ministry to support his athletic endeavors and athletic ambitions. And what he said in first service was that he felt I was so focused on ministry, I just didn't have time to help him pursue athletics. Yeah. And what we came to understand even through that situation, it wasn't that I was more focused on ministry. I didn't see the value in athletics. He was my first child going through this. And at the time, my focus was strictly on academics, and I didn't feel he was performing well academically. And I'm like, boy, I'm not trying to hear about any soccer or anything else. What you need to be focused on is his books. That's also before I realized there was the potential for them to get scholarship money. So when I heard the scholarship money, then I'm like, oh, well, we can blend this. We can blend. Just keep that academics to the point you can still get to play and get the scholarship. And I had to learn to blend that. With the thing with his music, it wasn't that I was so happy. I'm really happy that he was even involved in anything Christian. I'm serious. I was a happy hip-hop, Christian rap, whatever you want to call it. I had no issue with that. In my mind, and probably we've never really talked about this, I knew that wasn't his ultimate calling. And so I guess there was a part of me, maybe I wasn't really I probably wasn't going to hold behind it, but I was just happy you were doing anything in the church and with Christian. I had no issue with that. I knew it wasn't his ultimate calling, and that's probably what you were feeling. Well, we probably never talked about that.
Right then.
And I probably had a concern he's going to go down a road that is going to get him off. Now, let me say this. As I got older, Pastor Marsh can tell you about this, we resolved at the end of the day, God has their life. God has their purpose. I can't mold it. I can't call them.
Yeah.
I can't tell. I can tell them things and say things. At the end of the day, they have to accept whatever God's purpose is for their life. And I'm going to train them up in the way they should go, and then God got to take them there.
I'm glad you said that, and you said it took time to do that.
Yeah.
But at the time, like you said, we're going to talk about this now because I think it's going to help people. It's going to help me too. So looking back at it, that's such a real place because at the time, like you said, my background, my history was running from God, running from things in ministry, and then somehow, some way in the early youth ministry between college years, I started getting passionate about music. And I was like, hey, I'll make music for God, and I'll do that. So I put all of myself into it. So, and I was going hard at it. But like you said, you understood, being a man of vision, you saw what God revealed to you. And that is a friction point where how do I, as a father, protect what God's given me to nurture, but also support through this same thing. And so I realize these are the friction points of parenting. And I know we're talking about this, but I believe it's out there as well. And no one knows how to do it. No one knows. It's like you have one perspective that's very true. Like I wasn't wrong or off by being involved in that music. And you wasn't wrong or off by guarding the gates of the finale that God showed you. And so I believe that's a place, and I think that's when relationships begin to tear or begin to blind. But the word you used was blend.
Right.
The Holy Spirit, through the power of the Holy Spirit, I can blend this through a conversation. I can blend this by jumping into this and not having the answers,
As I think about it, I'm going to speak it. As I think about it, there's a time where, as your father, I still have to trust God that God has your life, period. I can show you an image. I can give you headlines. I got to leave it to the Lord to work the fine print with you. We've had to do that with you. Just knowing what the end's going to be, what we see. No matter how far it may look like you're away from it right now, we know what God's shown us, and we just kind of keep encouraging them. When Kendra was in college, I would see things and look like she was just getting off, and I would just send her a little text or something like, "Don't forget who you are." I wouldn't rebuke her. I wouldn't say, "I saw you at this party. What was in that red cup you was holding like this?" Okay? I wouldn't say that. I would just say, "Don't forget who you are. Don't forget who you are." I'm just kind of nudging it. Leaving ultimately to God to work out the details. You want to say?
Well, I'm saying is seeing where Chandler was with Godchild. I was a big Godchild supporter, right? I was at the shows. I was listening to the music. But that's what you have to do with your family. Like I feel like it doesn't matter if you see it as the end or not. It's good to have your people knowing that those are the people that are cheerleading you no matter what you do. You always see me, I'm commenting on something, I'm like, let's go Bailey, because I'm Team Bailey regardless of what you're doing. You could be on the drum line, and I'm supporting that,
Like we supported you when you were playing softball.
That was a bad time in my life.
Well, but one thing I'll add on that is parents' ultimate goal usually is protecting their kids, right? And so sometimes we can interpret something as not supporting us, but in actuality, you just don't want us to fail with something. And I remember when I said I was going to start my law firm right out of law school, and you said, "No, you should work for somebody for some years." And I was really upset about that because I knew that this was...
You're really upset
right,
by that.
I was upset, right? Because I knew that's what God put in me. And so sometimes I think parents need to trust what you've also put in your kids, even if you don't understand it. If your kids really has their foot in the ground and they're adamant about something, the faith that's in them, you could rest and know that God obviously put this vision in them for a reason, and they're going to accomplish something with it.
Yeah. And there might be times where if there's some visions I have that even as much as you are a great supporter and everything, that sometimes he don't have to hear the whole thing yet because it may be too much for him right now. So maybe sometimes even with your supportive parent...
How to manage your father?
But
go ahead.
Even with supportive parents, sometimes you have to realize that, okay, God gave me this vision to me, and he may not fully understand it right now. And so he may give me advice that isn't grasping full onto my vision, but that's okay. He still loves me, still got to go for it.
I think it's easier for a member to come up to you and say, "Hey, Bishop, I'm believing God for this new business I'm going to start, and just pray with me. You're going to believe with them. But hey, if we say, like, hey, my kids go bankrupt, I have to pay for them.
Right. I'm glad you said that.
So, you're right.
I'm glad you said
So
it.
I understand the friction that's changed, but it's a point of friction with us, though.
And I think that's why God gives us the friction in our family, though. Because check this out. If Dad would have supported you, you would not have had as much faith. What God wanted to do with you with your business requires faith, and that's what pleases God. As much as we would desire our natural father to always be pleased with every move we make, in order for us to grow in our faith with God, we got to be on alert to make him pleased with us more than even Dad. Because at the end of the day, what makes Dad so awesome, because he was concerned with God being pleasing God himself. And I think I realize it's like these are the, like you said, you mentioned the member situation. That works, and then we desire the same thing. God's like, nah, because if your dad tells you to go, you're gonna be more confident to go because he's telling you to go, not because God's, not because he's confirming what God putting you to go. So it's just a great balancer when it comes to family.
Yeah, and you really brought up a good point, and I was going to say that earlier, is that, members and even others of my spiritual children, they can come to me, Pastor, I'm believing this here, and I'll just pray and get an agreement. Okay, God, I give them favor, and that, because at the end of the day, this is a spiritual relationship. I ain't going to pay their bills. Really, that's the truth. I'm not going to pay the bills if they, but with y'all, I'm dealing with the spiritual part, but I'm also thinking as a father, you're right, I don't want you to fail. And if you do fail in some type of way, it's going to inconvenience me. I'm going to be there. I'm always going to help you. I'm always going to bail you out or help you through it in some kind of way. But I also had to realize as a father and as a man of faith, and I mean literally a man of faith, the things that got me where I am was taking those faith moves. And then that's what I had to start realizing with y'all. That's what I had to realize with whatever Kendra was doing. And the other part of your law story that you need to tell is that I did help you start that law firm, right?
I think you bought me a desk maybe or something like that. No, I mean, hey, let's not. I don't remember. I know you helped me. Believe me, you helped me. Okay.
I don't recall.
To mediate this?
You don't recall?
Let's
Okay.
We don't need to don't go down
We
the
can
list. Don't
mediate.
go down the
Receipts.
list.
I don't need to.
go down the
Do I need to list what I
list.
did
No.
to help you start the law
God don't
firm?
do that. That's not what God does.
We desire. This is good. This is real, but it's good.
Hey, I was shooting in the gym by myself.
I'm just going to tell you this here. I hope he's kidding. Because as a father, if he forgot what I did, that bothers me.
No, I'm playing. You did a lot to help me start a firm.
Okay.
I was joking.
Don't forget what your father does for you. Bought you
Happy
a
Father's
desk.
Day.
All right. Where were we? The question was, had I done anything to anger you or provoke you to wrath? The question should be, have y'all's children provoked me to wrath?
Yeah.
Proverbs 1 and 8. Well, the book of Proverbs, in case you all don't realize, for the most part, the Proverbs are lessons of a father to a son, or lessons that a father or that a son learned from his father. And so I really encourage you, whether you say you have a father or not, whether you had a father, if you would read the book of Proverbs, it's everything that a good father should teach you. Everything in terms of how to deal with relationships, how to deal with money, how to interpersonal skills, how to pray, how to set priorities. All of that is in the book of Proverbs. I spent a lot of time in my teenage years reading and studying the book of Proverbs. So a couple of Proverbs here. Proverbs 1 and 8 says, "My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother." Proverbs 13 and 1 says, "A wise son heareth his father's instruction, but a scorner heareth not rebuke." Can you put that scripture up for me in New Living Translation? Proverbs 13 and 1 should say something about just won't listen. Proverbs 13, 1, New Living Translation. "A wise child accepts a parent's discipline. A mocker refuses to listen to correction." Proverbs 15 and 5. "A fool despises his father's instruction, but he that regardeth reproof or correction is prudent or wise." So When you think about instruction of a father, what instructions do you feel that I've given you that you were really that you listened to and really produced in your life versus what instruction perhaps that I gave you that you didn't heed?
I think one instruction that you gave without speaking that I definitely incorporate into my life now is in times of pivots or when you needed to make a decision is the fasting and praying and going to God in those hard times and really exercising your faith that this is what I'm believing God for right now and going through that season and staying in that faith until we came to the other side. And so I realized just by meeting people and just making friends in life that like that's not a principle that everybody has. Like some people, there was a guy who I dated and his mother had breast cancer and I said, wow, how did you get through that? He said, well, she had a really good doctor. And I was like, dang, this isn't gonna work. That's all? What if she didn't have a really good doctor? Like what would be the grounding faith? I need you to be like, oh no, we are believing God for healing. And so having that mindset of just striving for faith.
Okay. Instruction that I've given you that you heeded or didn't heed.
So I'll talk about some instruction I didn't listen to. When we were looking for a house, I remember you mentioned we should probably get a newer home, and I wanted the classic looking houses, and we bought a nice.
But your wife wanted that
yeah,
too, right?
she did. It's a beautiful home, looks beautiful, but early on there's a lot of problems with it. New roof, gas not working, always issues because the house was built in 1906, and so I would call you complaining afterwards. You always go back, well, I told you probably should have bought a newer home. Like that doesn't help the roof I need to get right now. let's not go back and talk about the past anymore. But you always do give us advice that's for our best interest. Sometimes we listen, sometimes we don't. And we don't listen, we hear about it again too. So.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
I haven't done that with you. Regarding that major decision.
I'm confused right now.
Instruction that you heeded or didn't heed.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about the question, like, as far as impact, the instruction of the Father, what the most impactful instructions. I believe, like, some things are caught, some things are taught. One of the things I think I've really been able to catch closer in this season is really see you work your faith and walk it out in multiple areas. And, like, just seeing those points where it's, like, completely in the natural, seemingly oblivious to how this thing can happen or how that can happen, but see the faith literally pull it into reality. And so now the position of something that might be impossible, there's a step now that's possible. And then you embrace the next impossibility. And then God takes that piece of impossibility and makes it a step of possibility. That being said, my son Righteous, like, he has so much pure faith.
Yeah.
And I realize it's because of how you really carried your life out and how I'm walking it out. So really, faith has been the most impactful thing that I.
Okay. Another thing I'll add is, growing up, you were always honest about tithing, even when you used to give us allowance as a kid. So if we got $10, we had to tithe a dollar from it. And it's a principle that we stuck with mainly until this day. We're still tithing. And when I first started my law firm, I remember there would be times where the operating account will look low, and I'm in church on Sunday, but the tithes are still the tithes. And that pressure of thinking, man, I wish that's $300, $400 about the tithe right now. But every time I tithe, continue to do it, like clockwork, Monday or Tuesday, something comes in. And so it's just the principle of sticking to what the word says, even when in the natural, it looks like it doesn't make sense. That's true, genuine faith, like Chandler was kind of mentioning, and it always pays off at the end of the day.
Say anything about it? Instruction?
An instruction, I touched on this a bit before, an instruction that I didn't heed before that I will absolutely only heed to now was dating non-Christian men. Like my dad told me, I would be like, oh, I met a guy, he's nice, he's a gentleman, he treats me really well. Like, okay, what's his walk with Christ like? Well, he believes in God, or he's like spiritual, or he came to church with me like, once or twice before. And I used to think that was enough. And let me tell you, if you are committed to like being a Christian woman, and you want to live a Christian life, you cannot do it with a man who doesn't have his own walk with God. Not someone that's trying to piggyback off of your walk, not someone that will come to church when you, every 2 months when you beg him to come and he finally comes, but someone that can really has their own walk with God and can be a leader, a Christian leader in the relationship. And I feel like I used to say, well, these guys don't really exist. Like, where are they? They're rare. But as I got my act together and as I got more serious and turned my heart toward God, I meet Christian men now. You know, no one has won yet. This is still empty. May the best man win. But no. But now I meet Christian men, and it's because of what I feel like as a woman of God, I realized if you're saying that there are no Christian men out there, then you're saying that God isn't big enough. You're saying that God can't meet the desires of your heart. And you're having small faith. So now I know it's not gonna work. Before you even get to the door, you gotta have your own relationship with God.
Okay. And we've been through some experiences with, and we tried to be tolerant and understanding. Probably the hardest one was Tyler. Tyler, I don't even need to meet him. Tyler, I don't even need to see him. I'm like, we got, no.
I didn't always want to bring them home either. You would just insisted on knowing who I was dating.
Imagine that. I remember when she first went to college, we were having something at the house, and it was a holiday, 4th of July. And so she said, I'm going to be coming, I'm going to be bringing this guy she's dating home. And so our driveway, there's a bathroom, and there's a window right over the driveway. And I look as they're getting out the car, I got to yell out the door, just take him back. don't even bring him in the house. Just take him back. But we've been through some experiences.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
And I would say having strong, I knew.
Including the ones who meet, and I go to shake his hand, he dap me up. What's up?
I think he was one of those.
Yeah.
But I will say, when I saw him around you guys, I knew it was never going to work. Because I was just like, he couldn't really look you guys in the eye. And that's one of the benefits, too, of like being a woman. Sometimes it's a gift and a curse. Sometimes I wish I could just be attracted to Boo Boo the Fool. Life would be easier, you know? But I know better. So having a strong father and men in my life, when I saw him next to you guys, and when I say this is not about jobs. This is not about coming from money, none of that. I'm talking about the confidence and just being a man and being able to look someone in the eye and shake their hand and confidence in who you are.
Okay. Deuteronomy 6 and 7. It's talking about fathers teaching your children, but it says, repeat them again and again to your children. Talking about the principles of God. Talk about them when you are at home, when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, and when you get up. And when you're at home, when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, and when you get up. Certain things just so when you think about that in terms of things that I have taught or repeated or tried to get through to you over and over and over at home, when you're down the road, going to bed, when you get up, what comes to mind?
Man, so many things come to mind. I mean, taking care of business, you know.
What does that mean?
In all areas of life, from being a husband to paying your bills. I don't need to ask you certain questions because I already know the answer. And so if I'm asking the question and I'm gonna get a lecture or a sermon, you know, there's no point. All right, you've repeated it so much. I mean, like tithing. I mean, if you pull my tithing records, I mean, and I wasn't tithing. I mean, there's really no conversation to have because we already had it so much. So handling business is a big thing in the Bailey household, especially as a son. And if you don't handle your business, we're going to get a lesson. Minister CJ and I were talking a couple weeks ago. He would say, yeah, you know how Pop is, you know. There's no need even asking him about something like that because you already know the story. I mean, because you preach it to us so much.
Right?
I mean, words come to mind like know your priorities. What do you value? Stewardship. I really believe you really instructed us, and I'm changing the phrase, the pure understanding that money is a defense. And seeing, catching, I'm just flowing catching, seeing how you use your finances to set up your family versus like just simply enjoy life, and how you model sacrificing potentially your own desires to take care of your children. I remember I was doing something, I'm like, I had money coming in, and I'm like, man, I'm not doing nothing for me. You know what I mean? Everything, Adria, Helena, righteous, house.
Fathers, how many of you have been in that place where you just taking care of your family, feeling
We're
you
all
ain't
in
doing
that
nothing
place.
for yourself?
We all in that place. So I'm like,
Oh, you ain't been there, okay.
yeah, so it's constant. And I saw Best Buy talk to me. I'm riding, and Best Buy is like, you deserve me. You deserve me. And I said, I can do a couple times. My dad used to buy music that he couldn't afford on all these albums and stuff. I need something for me, right? And so, why am I telling this story?
Tell it.
And so I remember, upgrading phones and doing stuff, and I'm like, man, this is the point. This is the principle. And all it takes is one or two, and you realize how things can get off. And so really just accepting my season of stewardship and being a provider. I really caught that a lot from you. And then allowing God to take care of the rest and trusting that God will take care of you as he uses you to take care of your family.
That's really good.
Want to add anything to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think as far as the practical life skills that you instilled in us, well, one, I used to like that any moment that you were doing something that we'd never seen before, you would say, hey, you want to see this? I'm looking at the stock market right now. Oh, what's that? And so then without it having to be an intentional thing, I knew about stocks and trades and things like that you were constantly teaching us. And then, me and Chandler talked about, you really set us up to have great credit. And I used to have great credit, and I will again soon have great credit. And in those lessons that you said it over and over again, and it's clicking. I think my frontal lobe is done developing
Praise
now.
the Lord.
But just of being a good steward of your things. And then also one thing that you said that that has stuck with me about how I handle my money now is that it's not just credit, like it's your name, and that's integrity.
Yeah.
And the process of when you look at it, not only am I spending this, but I am saying I'm using money right now that I don't intend to give back immediately, and that's wrong. So looking at it through that mindset has been something I've been trying to activate.
Cool. Based upon your life experience and observations, what are the pros of being raised by a father versus without? And Tyler, you've done some. All of my children have had interesting friends too. They have one thing I have to honestly say, and I think it's because of being raised in a church community with all types of people from various backgrounds and economic levels. None of my kids have operated as bougie kids with their friends, sometimes we were like, now how did they become your friend?
I can go from the trap house to the White House. Amen.
I don't even think most people heard that.
They don't know
These
what that
mics
means.
on, they're really not loud enough.
I can go from the trap house to the White House. You have to be righteous, and sometimes you got to be ratchet. You can have both. Amen.
See, that's their philosophy of life. And I'm like, where'd you meet this person at? How did they become your friend? And but so you have seen people from various spectrums of life and levels in life, and even those with fathers, without fathers. I mean, so at this point in your life, and specifically Tyler, what you do as an attorney, you've done some criminal defense. You represent some people who've had some issues. Talk about fatherhood from that perspective.
That's a deep question. It could be a segment all in itself, but
Yeah.
I think that fathers serve such an important role in the family unit that, especially young black boys, us in particular, that if we don't have that male figure, a lot of times, society, eventually, we can get punished by society for not having it. I mean, because mothers are going to nurture us, but you need a father that's going to discipline you. And for what I've seen criminal defense is a lot of times kids get in trouble. Starts with they're in school. A lot of times the mom, my son didn't do this. My son's a good kid. And there's nobody there that really hey, tell them that you messed up and discipline them during the situation. And then eventually, sometimes they get to a point where, hey, now you're standing before a judge who's going to have no mercy on you. And now they're going to punish you for all the times that you did not have that father figure, really, who was instructing you and guiding you growing up. I mean, that's one thing. And another thing is there's a distrust of other men a lot of times, I see, especially because they never had a man that they really, truly trust. And so even sometimes I'm representing a kid, there's this distrust with me because they never had a man who's really going to, who's really looking out for them. And so they've been going through their whole life trying to navigate life without a father figure there. I mean, life is tough, and without a father, it can be rough. But the good thing is, I mean, especially being a part of a church family, I think that especially if you're young, growing up in church, you have uncles, you really need to, and especially mothers, really connect a young man with a brother who's going to look out for him, who's going to give him some guidance, because our kids need more of it. We need more of it because it's tough out here. We were just watching the, what's the show? Ava, When They See Us, you know, and I mean, that messed me up last weekend. But we need fathers. Fathers need to be fathers all the time. And a lot of times, on another dynamic I see, I'm sorry to go on this rant right now. When families break up, and then now a father has visitation, and there's an incentive to just, because you don't see your son or your daughter as much, you just want to have a good time with them. You want to go take them out to Frankie's. You want to show them that you're just a nice father, but you're not disciplining them. And so sometimes your visitation may just need to be, I'm disciplining my son this weekend. You can't just be a part-time pleaser with your children because there's no instruction with them on the other side. So you have to be a father 100% of the time, that I see. And it can be tough sometimes, but you got to be willing to be the bad guy in your own house, because if we don't do it for our kids, eventually there's going to be somebody out there who's going to not have any mercy on them. Yeah. And I've seen judges say from the bench, "Oh, did you have a father growing up?" "No, I didn't." And say, "Oh, did you have any uncles, anybody who looked out for you?" "No." And see this, and it literally will punish them after going through all the lack of instruction.
So that doesn't make them have any more mercy on them because they didn't have fathers or uncles who influenced their life. You said something about trust. That I never thought about that. But I do realize that many times that's what I'm dealing with men in the church, is that they didn't have a father or a man who was there for them that they can trust. So automatically, they ought to. So that flows over into church. So you distrust your pastor. You distrust preachers in general, but then all the more because you have never had a man who was trustworthy for you. Whether that's someone doing what they said they're going to do, or being there, having your back, etc.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to a younger, probably early 20s, late teens. He was buying a car, and he told me about I got this low interest rate. He told me what the interest rate was, and I told him, like, that's not low. You need to go take that car back. And he didn't trust what I was saying because, oh man, this brother trying to hold me down, doesn't want to see me riding clean. Right? Because there's a distrust of other male figures when you don't have a male figure in your life to trust.
That's
Wow.
really good.
Okay. Want to add into that?
Yes, that's a lot.
Observations regarding pros of being raised by a father versus without.
Observations of pros, being raised a father or not. I think, like, it's so powerful to see that even when looking at the youth, like the ones that have fathers, I don't want to say there's a less need for me as a youth pastor, but I realize that they're more focused on the word, and they don't need as much as that natural affection or that natural relationship. And then I realized that there's an unknowing. I mentioned subconscious earlier. The kids who don't have dads, the word's not enough. They need more. It's like I appreciate the message, Pastor Chandler, but when you play basketball with me, that means more than just, the word. You show them, and so I realize it's like the ones, I can just say from the youth standpoint, potentially unknowing that, needing that connection with a male in their life is so strong. And then to what Tyler just said earlier, you encouraged me even as a father, just tell me that. Trusting the culture of the context, if you are married, if you have a wife in your home, that she's going to take care of the nurturing. Like God has used her
Yeah.
for that, and being willing to step out and say, I got to be the discipline figure here. I got to be the bad guy, like you said, in the home. And I would even use the word discipline is nurturing. I think discipline, you're nurturing the mind, and the mother might nurture the heart, but both need to be stimulated to survive in life. Because if you keep living life through your heart, people can take advantage of you, and you can do stuff to get locked up. But if you have a man in your life to nurture your mind and stimulate your thinking, that when I see a police officer, it's not time for me to express how I feel right now, or I can express how I feel later on with the boys at the house. Like, this is what happened to me. But I realize that men, we help stimulate the mind. And I think that's a disconnect. I think even in our culture context, a lot of us we're so emotional. Our music, everything we do is about expression, and that's a gift. But when it comes to dealing with life, it can mess us up. It can be a handicap. And I thank you for stimulating even, my mind growing up, because you have to think through some things. Credit don't care how you feel. Banks don't care how you feel.
Right.
Law don't care how you feel. But you can think through that thing and make decisions. So we need dads to be present and stimulate the minds of our youth.
One thing I'll add to that, you did a good job with us as boys, is you raised us to be prepared for the world that is, not the world that we want it to be. Like, we had a conversation, hey, if an officer pulls you over, ask if you can go into your glove compartment. Even sometimes that doesn't work these days, unfortunately. But ask before you do something, okay? Because you were saying, hey, these officers, you're young, you're a black man, all right? All it takes is one thing. You raise your voice, and next thing you know, you could be on the news. I mean, we had that conversation right when we got our license, when we were allowed to drive out at night.
And I didn't have that conversation, so I ended up accidentally going on a slow speed chase with the police because I didn't know what to do. Remember that?
Yeah. Kendra's coming across, Lake Murray?
I was coming across Lake Murray Dam.
Lake Murray Dam. When I gets pulled over by the police, I guess she's probably speeding, gives them her license, and I guess she'd hear them say...
He gave it back, and so I was like, okay, bye.
Oh, I thought he told you...
He took my license and gave it back. He said, okay, I'm going to give you a ticket. And I was like, okay.
Oh, so he goes
and
back
then
to write the ticket.
away,
She
so
drives off.
I thought he was going to send it to me in the mail or something.
She drives off. Next thing you know, Dad, can you come here? All these police here. She got a slow police chase.
Surrounded by like 8 cops.
Of Lexington sheriff and all these cops. And so I think I immediately made a call to one of our police officers in the church. And my daughter's over there. Can y'all please let them know that she's not about to have a shootout with them, etc. Yeah, I probably didn't have the conversation with her. Yeah.
But back on a serious note, the impact of having a father, I would say one thing, as a woman, it's so important to have that affirmation from a loving father figure first before it comes from a man. It's really dangerous when the first person who ever got you something nice is a man. It's really dangerous when the first person who ever told you you're beautiful or that you're special, or the first manly embrace you ever felt is some joker. It can be so dangerous. And I also feel less of, obviously, everyone desires companionship, but I don't feel the need for affirmation only from a romantic partner, because I don't have that thirst for just like male energy or for a man that can speak into my life. And then I also think that it's really good to have there's some, we argued about this a little bit, and I was like, you can see some pictures and you'll look and be like, that girl clearly don't have a dad that would be ashamed of this photo, or she just doesn't esteem him and just don't care.
And I told her she's had some of those too.
I disagree, but but yeah, so I think it's good to also have a father. Obviously, I'm living my life, it's my own life, but I know that I represent more than me, and so having someone that looks to me, someone that I represent is good, especially in those formative years when your decision making is still here or there. It's really good to have someone that you represent.
I have a kind of a question for you. I've noticed one thing, some of my friends who grew up fathers who are really driven, and it's almost as they have a drive that I see some of my other friends who have come from good families, have fathers that they don't have. And I think there's a aspect of it, like, hey, this is my only shot I have. I'm driven. I don't want to fail. And sometimes men who have had good fathers, sometimes they know they have somebody who's going to catch them if they fall. But you growing up with your relationship with your dad, do you feel like you were you were driven to be a good father and a good man, and you didn't take anything for granted? Do you think that was an advantage of your upbringing?
An advantage of it. I got exposed. The best thing that happened to me was that I got exposed to other families beyond my family. That at one point I even went through an identity crisis because I was seeing that, but I knew that was not what I came from, but I saw that was good. So I think exposure is so much. So by me getting exposed to other types of families through the school I went to, and even I did this a couple weeks ago. I did the homegoing service for Elder Fields, and it occurred to me that Elder Fields was a man in our church he went to be with the Lord a couple weeks ago, but a man who was with his family, taking care of his children. I didn't see that. And so I realized he was an image for me of somebody who's with his family, taking care of his children. And so when I grew up in the projects, the families that there would be men who would be there and then like, oh man, it would be like, man, they broke up too. I remember this one family, I got to use a name, but I remember, we didn't know them very well, but everybody knew this was a family in the projects. And they broke up. All of us was messed up. Man, they broke up too, man. And so I saw images of what I wanted to be like. And I had an image of what a family should be, what a father should be. And of course, y'all know I didn't do anything perfectly. And I think all of us are still a work in progress. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say to all of us is that parenting and fathering is lifetime. I was talking to a family member recently, and they said to me, I said, how old, this is a great niece. I said, how old are your children? She said, they're almost grown. I said, really? She said, one going to be gone in 8 years, and one going to be gone in 6 years. You know how old her kids are? Her children are 10 and 12. And she's doing a countdown that when they're 18, it's over and they're out of here. Can I tell you, if that's how you think about parenting, you got it all wrong. This is a lifetime endeavor. This is a relationship that needs to continue to be evolving, developing, and you need to be there for every season of life as long as you can be, which is another reason. Pastor Marshall and I, we were talking about this recently. It occurred to me, I'm going to kind of go deviate here. We would think, and we talked about this on the phone yesterday. I said, your mom and I was just talking about this. Why don't people take care of their health? Know you got diabetes. Know you got high blood pressure. And still don't care how you eat. And so I started coming up with this theory about this because when I found I had this heart condition, I was 45. And they told me open heart surgery. And my first thought, I could die. And the concept of dying and leaving my children and not being there to be with you, as in those cases, to get you through college, to help you in those early years of raising your own kids, that was horrifying to me. So I live with purpose that I need to be around for them and my grandchildren and ideally my great-grandchildren. I live with purpose that I need to be here for y'all, that my life is something going to be missing with people I should be impacted. So we were talking about this. We said, well, maybe people live like, well, my life don't really, it don't really matter. Maybe you don't live with purpose. So that I don't know, because I don't know what it is to live in a way that I'm not concerned about my health. But I see so many, I'm going to say, of y'all do it. You got high blood pressure. You have diabetes. You have these health conditions and don't care how you eat. And so or taking care of these bodies. I said to a sister of mine, she may be watching right now. I said, you only get one of these. She's 60-something and has these health issues. I said, when you last have a physical? I said, you get one of these. You get one body. And so my thinking is, it's not just about you. When God puts you in the life, and you have children and grandchildren, you need to be here to give them, as long as you can, to give them wisdom. You need to have your mind straight. You know what I'm saying? We're here to continue to impact our families and get them better and better. Now, I don't know what that had to do with anything, but I just went down that path. And I hope that y'all will think beyond just yourselves. So this whole thing of just thinking the way some of us was raised, you wait till you're 18, it's over, and you out of here. And if you think that's what parenting is, no, that's what just keeping a roof over your head and keeping kids eating. Parenting happens when you can guide them through the decisions that they are legally grown to be able to make, but they respect you enough to let you have input in those choices.
That had to do with everything. I know you say, I don't know what that has to do. What you're doing, you're spiritually fathering, and not everybody appreciates that quality about you. But you're fathering. That's not pastoring, that's fathering. You're fathering the congregation. And when I think about this whole concept, and this has been in me, and I want to just say this, I don't know why we desire to be perfect and why we want to connect to people because we think they're perfect, but we got it off and we're wrong. You're connected to our pain. That you were drawn by the Spirit of God and you're connected to our pain. The only reason why he's a man of wisdom is because God brought him through a season of lack of wisdom, and now he is a man of wisdom. The only reason why I can teach the youth, because it comes from a place of brokenness. So I really want everyone to grasp, I think as fathers, we got to stop looking for perfection and start trusting in progression. So what happens is every season challenges you. As much as I think I have the best father in the world in my life, my daughter pulls stuff out of me that he could not foresee to give me. Right. And it doesn't make him a bad father. It's God progressing the family. And so what happens is, I'm like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do this? But it's important to her. And I know the Holy Spirit, and I know God's bothering me about it and saying, this is where I'm stretching you. I'm stretching you more. And so I think we desire not to be just stretched. We just want to land on success, and we just want to land on excellence. But God sends us fathers to remind us about progression. And it's on my heart right now. If you could just take the next step, if you could just call that daughter, if you could just call it, don't worry about everything that did not happen. Just take a step. Because what I realized, when I take a step, I land in purpose. And if I'm in the moment with my child, in that moment, they have perfection. I'm not perfect, but that day was perfect. I'm not perfect, but at graduation was perfect. I'm not perfect, but because I was at the birthday, that birthday was perfect. And I think we got to live selflessly. You were not trying to be perfect, but you made our world perfect. That's what fathers do. And I just want to speak to that dad who did not have a dad, because you're listening to a man of wisdom who did not have the best man of wisdom in his life. But why are you listening to him? You're more connected to pain than you know it, and the blessing of wisdom is right behind your pain if you see it differently.
Yeah. Now, speaking of wisdom, and we'll end with this. I shared this with our congregation this morning. So Bishop Jakes came first to speak here. Did we figure out what year was it? 2014? 2014. So 5 years ago, first time Bishop Jakes came here. And he stayed afterwards. And I can tell you, with respect to other people I was connected with and other people who have come, they would, and some of y'all seen them, they finish preaching and they take the mic off and they head straight out and they head to the airport and they're back home. Bishop Jakes, I invited him to stay for a reception, with a small intimate reception. And he said, oh, sure. But he said something in that, I'll never forget, I'm sitting there where I just said, he's sitting immediately to my left. And I remember Pastor Marshall and I were like, man, we were so honored. We felt like Peter, James, and John on the Mount of Figuration. It was good for us to be here, you know. And so he was just giving us so much wisdom. But one of the things he said, I can't remember. I think I said something about Chandler or something I had been through with Chandler in the past. And he said something. He said, one thing we have to understand, that our children are not actors in our movies so we can get the Academy Award. They're not supporting actors in our movies so we can get the Academy Award. They're not supporting actors in our plays so we can get the Emmy or the Tony. He said, whatever they're going through, it's about them. It's not about you. Now, Christian parents, you really got to get that, because you've been raising your children thinking this is about how you're going to look as a Christian mother, how you're going to look at it as a Christian father if your child is smoking weed, how you going to look as a Christian father, Christian mother if your child gets pregnant. How this is not about you. This is about them. And if you are not there to guide them through that and make it about you, you will totally blow it. Because you make this about you, and it's about your image rather than about their pain. It's about your image rather than about their deficits. And so you have to recognize that parenting is about my children, not about me. That changed my life. And I remember Pastor Mark, and when he said that, I said, man, and I realized the mistakes I had made as a father. And I said, man, I sure wish you were around 10, 15 years ago that I would have heard those things. So parents, I want to encourage you, and fathers, I want to encourage you. Yes, we're providers, and for many of us who are African-American men who didn't have good providers, we think that's the number one thing. But that scripture that says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children is probably best translated in the Amplified. It said leaves an inheritance of moral stability. So more than money, moral stability. One of the things I had a concern with as God blessed us financially, I was concerned that my children would be lazy. I really was. Because, you know, we've had help around our house, people doing things for us, whether somebody cut, you know, as we went on, whether it's somebody coming to do the lawn, or somebody washing our cars, and somebody helping us perhaps around cleaning the house. We had help. And I was concerned they would be lazy. But none of my children are lazy. All of them are driven because it wasn't about that. It was about the example of tenacity that they saw. Now, here's the thing. For those of us, I'm going to take a little turn here. For those of us who have means beyond what we were raised with, I'm talking about financial means. How the means helps you with parenting is now it gives you the freedom, listen to me, to support your children in doing something you never could have dreamed of doing. You didn't catch that. Now that you are blessed financially, you should now have the ability to support your children in a way of doing something, pursuing something that you never could have done because, okay, many of us were raised, listen, what you need to do is get a job down that factory, get some benefits, and get yourself together. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You just did a good job with some benefits. And so now, particularly these millennials, they ain't just thinking about a good job with benefits. They're thinking about pursuing purpose and passion. Can I tell you, while they're pursuing purpose and passion, somebody got to pay for that. It takes time to pursue purpose and passion. Your friend, none of them watching, girl you went with, Callie, remember Callie? You went to school with, okay? Her father's a doctor, and he was treating me one day, and I said, how's your daughter? And he said, man, she's still trying to figure this thing out. See, I was paying for her to go to dental school, and now she said she wanted to be a dentist. Now I'm paying for her to do such and such. Y'all know most of us, it ain't no option. If you pay for dental school, doggone, you're going to be a dentist. You understand what I'm saying? It ain't no options, because if I done pointed you here, that's what you're doing. So those of us who have means now watch this. I'm going to give you another way to look at scripture. Train up a child in the way he should go. That's not just the word. That's just not biblical. The way so they can fulfill purpose that God put in them. Whether that's law or whether that's ministry or whether that's fashion and marketing. Train them up in the way they should go. And those of us who God has given the liberty, what I'm telling you, revisit how you view parenting. So God had to speak to me to allow Kendra and support Kendra, because it wasn't about allowing, because she's grown. Okay? Once she's 18, she said, I'm going to New York, I'm going to New York. But when I said I need to release her to go, saying I'm letting you go to New York, and I understand while you're there, you may not have it all together, and I may need to have to support you while you still get footing. Okay? And so God had to speak to me to do that so that she can become, watch this, and what we realize now, it ain't about the job. It's about her purpose and her becoming the woman of God she needs to be, and follow a journey and a path for her that perhaps could not have been fulfilled if she stayed here around all y'all calling her Pastor Bailey, Bishop Bailey's daughter all the time. Y'all understand me? So I really want all of us, especially as fathers and parents in general, let's really embrace this journey to help our children be everything God created them to be. And two things, not just try to live vicariously through them, and not try to make them be something we want them to be because it's going to make us look good and we get the Academy Award. Yeah. Thank you, sons, daughters. Come on, give it up for my children today. Thank you all so much.